If one thing's for certain about this year, 2020 has been absolute bonkers. Back in 2019, who would have thought we would have had a global pandemic, a huge amount of social outrage, and more importantly, NASCAR has the opportunity to become a relevant sport again. This is honestly one of the biggest opportunities NASCAR's had in years. With a huge amount of younger generation fans starting to peep their heads into the sport, if we can get them to stay, this is going to be huge for NASCAR and possibly a second renaissance. After an abysmal 2010 decade, if we can get 2020 started properly, this is going to be an amazing decade for motorsports. All we have to do now is make sure those eyes stay on us for the biggest race of the year. What else? The Great American Race. The product on the track can only really get you so far, so you gotta turn to the next best thing. Marketing. Now, I'm pretty sure Fox is going to do a pretty good job of marketing this year's 500. After all, 2020's Daytona 500, that's a pretty good Super Bowl commercials to promote it. And if Fox can do the same thing again and do some amazing commercials, now with this much attention to the sport now, I think we can have an amazing 500 and probably one of the best viewed 500s we've had in a very long time. Now I can go on what I think NASCAR should do, but instead, let's take a look at what I think NASCAR shouldn't do. As a matter of fact, let's go back in time to a few years ago and take a look at what might be the worst marketing campaign in NASCAR history. Oh yeah. Today, we're going to talk about why Daytona Day was a marketing disaster. Let's do it. It's probably known more than anything now that Daytona Day was an embarrassment to NASCAR. It's one thing to have a commercial that doesn't impact anything, but it's another thing to have a commercial that completely impacts everything by making everyone cringe and not want to watch the one thing you're trying to promote. There were so many things wrong with these commercials, especially the first two. The third one was okay, but I couldn't find it on YouTube, so I'm not going to talk about it. But we're going to talk about mainly the 2016 and 2017 commercials. The 2016 commercial was by far the worst one, and I'm honestly surprised they did it again after how big of a train wreck the first one was. And the 2017 one was the most infamous because of a certain YouTuber talking about it and getting a lot of national attention. I even made a video talking about it by frame about my certain opinions on how it was extremely dumb. Today, we're not going to really go bit by bit through these commercials like I did last time, but instead just talk about why the entire marketing campaign failed, and how it might have even gone to impact the ratings negatively in the following 500s. And trust me, they messed up in almost every single category of making a commercial. Also, yeah, I know it won an Emmy for Best Sport Advertisement, but it had no competition anyway, so it doesn't matter. Alright, video time. Let's go ahead and quick talk about the casual fan. It's probably one of the most common types of sports fans in almost any sport you can really think of. It's not really a diehard fan of the team they support, but they're just there because, hey, they're popular. And almost every sport has or had a casual fan base at one point. And of course, NASCAR had it as well. NASCAR's casual era came in, when else, the golden years of NASCAR in the 80s and 90s. After the 1979 Daytona 500 took the country by storm, it should be no coincidence that the next 25 years would be a huge explosion of popularity within the sport. With a mix of great racing, likable drivers, and so many recognizable brands in the sport, it was a casual fan's. But there's one thing that's important to know about the casual fan. You must make sure your product stays good and able to keep them around. So NASCAR did the exact opposite. Well, kinda really. I kinda think the casual fan kinda got to Brian France's head, which led to a lot of the issues that came within the following few years, leading to NASCAR's big downfall. Now, in order to understand how Brian France completely fumbled the casual fan, let's take a look at the other sports, for example. The NFL is the king of the casual fan base. With so many likable teams, with so many compassionate fans, eventually it's going to have an impact on the casual fan at one point. And if the product on the field doesn't get to them, its huge impact in pop culture will get to them eventually. And because of that, it's very easy for not only the sport to market its product, but other brands as well. And the NFL has managed to keep this streak of relevance for a very long time, with almost no sign of slowing down. Same with the other big sports, the NBA, MLB, and NHL as well. The reason that these fans manage to stay around is mainly because of how simple it is to understand the basis of the sports. The NFL is just get the ball to the goal. The NBA is get the ball to the goal. The NHL is get the puck to the goal. And the MLB is get the player to the goal, which is home base. And then there's NASCAR. You see, all these other sports managed to stay relevant for so long is because they've stayed so consistent over the years when it comes to understanding the basis of the sport. NASCAR, on the other hand, is the exact opposite, as it changes the rules up every single year, and it gets to the point where it's just absolutely confusing. It goes from 36 races, whoever has the most points at the end of the season is the winner, to, okay, how does this work again? Oh, there's playoffs, 16 drivers make it into the final race, and then a couple drivers get eliminated every few rounds or so. And who cares if a driver has 9 wins? He didn't do too well. He didn't win at the right time or whatever or not, so he didn't make it in. It just gets absolutely confusing for people that are just trying to watch the sport casually and are not diehard fans. So because of this huge, desperate move to keep the casual fan around, it almost single-handedly shot NASCAR in the foot, causing NASCAR's casual fan base to fade away. So why do I bring all of this stuff up about the casual fan? And what does this have to do with Daytona Day? Well, it's simple. Daytona Day is literally pretending like the casual fan base is still as good as it was a decade ago. And perhaps even more so. It's almost like all the stuff that's in these commercials are trying to make it act like the Daytona 500 is as big, if not bigger, than the Super Bowl. Which is not true at all. And I'm not even trying to be pessimistic here, it's just a fact. No matter how hard NASCAR tries over the next few years, the NFL will always be the superior sport. Even back in the golden years, it was still better than NASCAR. NASCAR's casual fan base is not as big as it was in the past, like I've said before. It's nature for it to fade away over time. So for NASCAR to pretend like this fade never happened and it's still living in a fantasy land of the 90s is absolutely terrible. Now I know what you might be thinking. Well, does that mean you want NASCAR to not try to promote its content and be a boring sport? Absolutely not. There's a pretty thick line between promoting your sport and showing how exciting the action is to trying way too hard to promote it and trying to make it more exciting than it really is. But yeah, long story short, it panders to the casual fan base at a time when it was at its absolute lowest and trying to make it so unrealistic as well. Not saying I want the exact opposite of trying to show how, oh, the sport's boring, but I also don't want it trying way too hard, and it did the latter. Alright, now that that's done, let's move our focus on to the next part, which is the focus of these campaigns. Alright, let's move on. Alright, I'm going to show you a clip or two of the Daytona Day commercial. Now, imagine you have no idea what NASCAR is, or that the Daytona 500 even exists. Now, would you understand what these commercials are trying to promote? Yeah, neither do I. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is the biggest problem I have with this marketing campaign. It's a terrible idea to take the focus off of the racing and more to the fan base. Which, might I remind you, these commercials try to oversaturate and fail miserably. Now let's go back and take notes back to the big boy of sports, the National Football League, again, and take a look at its big event, the Super Bowl. With a huge casual fan base that isn't entirely based on the product on the field, it shouldn't be a surprise that not everybody watches the Super Bowl for the game. As a matter of fact, it has 3 major key elements that makes it so big of an event. The game, the commercials, and the halftime show. All 3 are such hugely hyped up events that makes the Super Bowl worth watching. Almost to the point where it's a huge national event, even for people that aren't really major sports fans. Super Bowl Sunday alone is almost an icon in American culture. Now let's take a look back at the Great American Race. What do people watch the Daytona 500 for? The racing. And nothing else. Sure, you got that pre-race concert, but like, does anybody watch that? That's not the track. Come on, I was at the race in 2018, even I didn't watch that. The people that want to watch the Daytona 500 mainly watch it for the racing on the track. Unlike the Super Bowl, there's not really much of an other reason to watch it. There's no majorly funny commercials or some major pop band coming into play during the event. All of its ratings come from the product on the track. So it should be a no-brainer that to promote the Daytona 500, you promote the racing on the track, right? Right? So yeah, Daytona Day naturally would promote everything but the racing on the track. Are you kidding me, Fox? Are you out of your mind? You'd think it would be a no-brainer to know what to promote, but Daytona Day does the exact opposite. How do you mess this up? There's like 2 things that are important about a race: the racing and the fan base. How do you pick the wrong thing this badly? They don't show any major moments from the previous 500s, or really anything to that matter that has to do with the racing on the track. Now, 2018 did it a lot better, and I'm so glad they actually took notes from 2017. But yeah, that commercial wasn't a good saving grace. And again, I'm not saying do the exact opposite and have a Racing 101 commercial. And yes, I'm looking at you, Michael Jollibee. Again, NASCAR shouldn't be doing one extreme or the other to the point where they do no racing at all or just a boring PowerPoint presentation on the history of NASCAR. Everything needs to be balanced, as all things should be. Like I said, the first 2 commercials did not show any true racing at all, or barely even any. The 2017 commercial, the only types of racing that were seen were just rendered CGI racing. So yeah, since NASCAR didn't promote the racing, what did they promote? Let's take a look at the content! So yeah, like I said before, I already did a video talking about the 2017 Daytona Day, frame by frame almost, but instead, we're just going to talk about the basis of every commercial and the contents they show. Did NASCAR completely sabotage the one thing they were supposed to do? Instead, they just showed a bunch of fans having a good time. But again, going back to the casual fan base that doesn't exist at this point in time, it shows this fan base doing completely unrealistic things. And it's clearer than crystal that NASCAR was trying to pander to the younger crowd with so many college scenes and frat parties. Which I'm just going to go ahead and say at this point in time was almost entirely unrealistic, because unless they were diehard fans, they're either too young to understand or been fans since the 80s. As a matter of fact, a lot of people in these commercials act so bizarre that I'm starting to guess that they don't even know a single thing about NASCAR to begin with. They're probably pulled off the street and just said, hey, act like you're excited about something. For what? Yeah, just act excited for stock footage. There's only one really realistic scene in this, and that is, of course, the Ice Age scene. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Like the igloo scene. The igloo scene. But other than that, all the other parties that are shown in these commercials are very unrealistic and just forced. Like very, 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 very forced. A lot of the stuff they do in these parties are completely ridiculous. Yeah, nothing screams a high-speed 500-mile race more than turtle racing. And sometimes I even feel like they just throw scenes in just because. Like this scene. One of the most infamous scenes in any NASCAR commercial. What is the point here? What does this have to do with NASCAR? What is going on? Nothing makes sense. And it really doesn't help that the tone of these commercials are equivalent to a pinball machine. It's almost like by the time you finally get to understand what's going on, the commercial's already been over for 20 minutes. And it's really a shame too, because I really think it could have worked if NASCAR didn't just try to throw in a bunch of references expecting everyone to understand what it meant. Like, not everybody's going to immediately know that these guys are trying to impersonate Richard Petty, or not know who this random guy is in the supermarket, and then see that same guy just come out of a car ready to do something. It's honestly very bizarre that it tries to promote to the casual fan, but at the same time throw in a bunch of things that they don't really understand. Like, what is NASCAR trying to promote to? Die-hard fans or casual fans? You can't make a proper commercial if you're just going to keep flipping who it panders to every 5 seconds. Oh yeah, and don't even get me started on the brand integrations. From Pizza Hut to FedEx to David Land memes. Yeah, I get it. NASCAR is just one big product placement showcase. These commercials are just trying to be way too obvious and trying to advertise other things. What is this, the Emoji Movie? Rapid destroys the information superhighway 2.3. It's just an absolute mess, is all I'm really saying. And it really doesn't help that Fox tries to throw in other references to its other shows, like the Simpsons reference. And whoever the heck this guy was that's trying to play Brad Keselowski. He's probably a Fox actor, needless to say. Again, this commercial is actively trying to promote literally everything this side of the equator, except for the one thing people tune in to watch during this major event. Congratulations, Fox and NASCAR, you just concocted the perfect storm of awfulness of a marketing campaign. Alright, now that that's all said and done, let's go to QWERTY and take a look at what we've learned today. The reason Daytona Day failed as a marketing campaign is plain and simple into 3 major ordeals. It tried to pander to a casual fan base that was at its all-time lowest at the time these commercials aired and tried to pretend like its fan base didn't fade away. The campaign also failed to recognize the one major thing people come to the 500 to watch for, which is of course the racing. Instead, it was too busy trying to emulate the Super Bowl and trying to make it look like there was more reasons to watch it than the simple racing. And in that said attempt, it failed miserably by having a terrible tone full of unrealistic scenarios, throwing in a bunch of references expecting everyone to understand what they mean, painfully obvious brand recognition, both in the sponsorships and even Fox's own line of other shows. And the tone was so off the walls, it was just painful to understand and to make anyone's head spin. Even the people that would understand anything, really. So yeah, that's pretty much it about why Daytona Day failed. Well, fortunately, NASCAR would learn its lesson and actually know how to make a commercial in the next few years, with 2019 and 2020 having some pretty good commercials. And I really have some high hopes that the 2021 commercials are going to be top-notch. With the majority of the people watching the race going to be on TV, and of course with COVID lurking around still, a lot of people are probably going to be watching this event. I really, really hope NASCAR plays their cards right, because if they do, we might have another 1979 Daytona 500 on our lines. We might have a resurgence in NASCAR popularity. But in order for it to get to that, we need to have some proper marketing. And don't do like what they did at Daytona Day. Because at the end of the day, there's one thing for certain. Daytona Day was a marketing disaster. My name is Nazhawk, and thank you for watching today's video. See you in the skies.